Hi, I'm Bill Hendricks with the Giftedness Center. Did you ever wish you had an owner's manual on you? You know, if you were going to look at a car or a computer or some sophisticated piece of equipment, before you opened up the hood, you'd check the owner's manual first to find out, what was this machine designed to do? What does it take to get it to do that? What's the internal logic of how it works? What other pieces of equipment does it need around it to be most effective? And of course, maybe the most important part, what are the little warning labels on this thing that say, whatever you do, don't do this with this piece of equipment? Don't you wish you had an owner's manual on you and other people? Well, in fact, there is a kind of an owner's manual on you. We call it your giftedness. And it's the phenomenon of giftedness. And by a phenomenon, I mean like gravity's a phenomenon. You don't have to know anything about gravity to take advantage of it. It's just the way the world is. Well, there's a phenomenon about human beings. And we call it their giftedness. Let me show you. Giftedness is the unique way in which you function. It's the inborn core strengths and natural motivation that you instinctively use to do things that you find satisfying and productive. Giftedness is not just what you can do, it's what you were born to do, what you enjoy doing, and what you do very well. Everyone is born to do something, to solve a problem, to bring a creative vision to life, to bring about change, to make an impact. Could go on and on about all the different kinds of things that people are born to do. Whatever that is, that's what we call their giftedness. Giftedness, though, is not about some unusual ability. We tend to think of the Michael Jordans of the world, the Oprah Winfreys of the world, and certainly they have a giftedness. But everybody has a giftedness. And oftentimes it expresses itself in very, very mundane things, but nonetheless, the person takes a lot of satisfaction and energy from what they're doing. Nor should we confuse this term giftedness with talented and gifted. I know that's used in schools in many places, but it makes it sound like some people have giftedness and others don't. But the truth of the matter is every human being has his or her own unique giftedness. Now, also, giftedness is not an occupational title. Some people identify themselves, well, I'm a salesman, I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a homemaker. Those are roles, those are titles, those are a set of expectations. Giftedness, though, has to do with your personhood. And it's not about what you do, it's about how you do whatever you do. It's a pattern in your life. So how do we figure out what your giftedness is? Well, there's a pretty interesting part of the phenomenon that makes it possible. It turns out that giftedness is a motivational and behavioral pattern in one's life. In other words, it's something that you come back to again and again and again as a way of behaving. Let me give you an example that lots of people will identify with. You've all heard of Warren Buffett. There was a woman named Alice Schrader who recently wrote a biography of Warren Buffett called The Snowball. And as I listened through a recording of that not long ago, I discovered that from a childhood, Warren Buffett displayed a fascination bordering on an obsession with numbers, the analysis of numbers, and the potential for gain from knowing how numbers work. Now, mind you, he's just a little boy, but he's fascinated with numbers, almost from the womb. He would sit along the roads of his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, and memorize the license plate numbers, just to see if maybe the same one would come along. He began selling packs of gum at age 6. He would buy 6 packs of Coca-Cola for 25 cents, and then he'd resell them for 5 cents a bottle, making a 20% profit. Not bad for a little boy. His favorite toy was something called a money changer. Well, he could picture numbers compounding the way a snowball grows when rolled across a snowy lawn, hence the name of Alice Schrader's book, The Snowball. Buffett was fascinated by the way that numbers exploded as they grew at a constant rate over time, such that even a small sum could eventually grow into a fortune. Nobody taught him these things. Yes, he did go to school, he learned math, he learned calculus, he learned accounting and so forth. But the innate knack for numbers was there essentially from the womb. And so by the time he started his own firm, now known as Berkshire Hathaway, it was a foregone conclusion that here was a man who was in the sweet spot of his functioning. But notice there was a pattern in his life, a motivational behavioral pattern in his life that was manifested itself all the way along. And so if you start to add up these pieces, you discover that there's a very consistent set of themes that keep identifying themselves for a person. In this case, for Warren Buffett. Well, we could do the same for you. All through your life, you've been doing certain activities from which you've gained energy. And that's the telltale sign of giftedness, that you took satisfaction from an activity or you gained energy from doing it. And if we line up a number of these activities from throughout your life and we examine them, we discover that there's a very consistent and frankly remarkable pattern of behavior that you keep coming back to again and again and again. And so to discover your giftedness, we would have you tell us these stories from your life, and then we would go back and we would look for that pattern, and we always find one. Remember the story of Eric Liddell? Eric Liddell, back in the 1920s, was going to go to the mission field in China, and so to prepare for that, he went to college at Cambridge in England. And while he was there, he was found to be very, very fast. So they put him on the Olympic team for England. Well, his sister was there with him, and she was exercised that she was afraid that he was not going to be ready for China and that he was going to get distracted. And she kept nagging him about it. Finally, to get her off his back, he took her out for a walk one day. And he said, Jenny, listen, God made me for China, but God made me fast. And when I run, I feel His pleasure. It's the best expression of giftedness I've ever heard. God made me fast, and when I run, I feel His pleasure. Well, the same could be said for you. God made you blank, and whatever we put in that blank, when you do it, you feel His pleasure. What I do is help people figure out what goes into that blank. Because the truth of the matter is most people have no idea what their giftedness is. It's not because they're not bright. It's not because they lack the ability to reflect upon themselves. It's because they live inside their skin. And so they may see other people's giftedness, but they can't see their own because when they're using it, they're not thinking about using it. They're just using it. They wouldn't think of doing life any other way. What I get to do is hold up a mirror and say, here's what you're doing, and here's the value of what you're doing. Here's your giftedness. And if we identify your giftedness, we've now got that owner's manual on you, and you can use that to find a job, to be better at the job that you have, to understand your relationships, both at work and at home better. All kinds of ways that giftedness applies. In fact, just about everything you do is touched by your giftedness. And so to know what it is to basically have a strategic advantage in your life.